Hilchos Tefillah Perek Achad Asar. Laws of Prayer, Chapter 11. Today is Hilchot Bet HaKnesset. That's what we're going to learn about today. The laws of a shul. Halacha Aleph. Kol makom sheyesh bo asara miYisrael. Any place that has at least 10 Jews. Tzarich la'achin lo bayit. They have to prepare a house. Sheyikansu bo litfilah b'chol et tfilah. Where they can gather for prayer at every time of prayer, 3 times a day. Arvit, Shacharit, Mincha. Umakom zeh nikra Bet HaKnesset. This place is called Bet HaKnesset, which literally means a place of gathering. Knesset is Lashon kinus. A house of gathering, which we call today a shul. V'kofin b'nei ha'ir zeh et zeh. It's so important to have a shul that the people of the city can force each other. And the commentaries say b'mamon u'beguf. That means you can force people to pay, and also force people to work on the construction if you need. Livnot lahem Bet HaKnesset, to build for them a shul. V'liknot lahem sefer Torah nevi'im u'ktuvim, and to buy a sefer Torah.
So you have forcibly to do that?
You could, if you need to. If you need to. To buy a Torah, to buy prophets, and to buy the writings. Today we have it all printed. So people say that you can actually force the community, if you need, to buy the printed books that you need. The Tanakh. In the olden days, they only had the scrolls. So every shul needed to have its own set of Torah, Nevi'im, Uktuvim. But that's how important it is to have a shul and to have a Sefer Torah. Halacha bet. Keshebonin bet HaKnesset. When you build a shul, en bonin ota ela begovha shel ir. You only build it at the highest point in the city. Shene'emar, as it says, Berosh homiyot tikra. You should call out at the top. Homiyot is like noisy places. So it's a reference to Torah. It's a verse in Mishlei from Shlomo HaMelech.
Main Street.
But Main Street. But the idea is that just like when you learn Torah, you do it at the top of the city. So when you daven also, you should do it at the top. Some commentaries connect it because you're supposed to learn where you daven, like we do over here. We learn in the same place that we daven, so we should have it at the highest place. Not only do you build it at the highest place, umagbihinota, we build the shul very tall, ad shetehei gvoha mikol chatzrot ha'ir, to the point that it should be higher than every courtyard of the city. That means every house in every courtyard. The commentaries say it doesn't have to be higher than the wall of the city. Let's say there's a choma. If there's a wall in the city or a big tower, the shul doesn't have to be taller than that. But it has to be taller than every residential area. Now, today's day and age, the commentaries say it doesn't work anymore that way. Why? Because the cities aren't fully Jewish. And so you have people that are non-Jewish, they have big buildings. So once the non-Jews build higher buildings, so the Jews also don't have to do it anymore. What about in Israel? I don't know if it goes into the same category.
In Israel, there's a double problem because they do a lot of synagogues in shelters, bomb shelters,
Right.
underground. So
Right.
there's no windows.
Yeah, there's nothing.
Sons of Lord.
Yeah. The Mishnah Brewer writes that it seems like in his time, the custom already stopped. Like, it just wasn't bi'acholet to make the shul the tallest building. But he says that if you're in a Jewish city, if you have all the possibilities, then you shouldn't be lenient. Im yesh be'efsharut, lo lahakel. To build it as tall as you can.
Well,
In fact,
so,
in
they should have it. What in Binyan Bursa in Ramat Gan? It's the
Huh?
tallest building in Israel.
I guess so. No, I was in Australia, and they have a sign there that it used to be, not anymore, but in the 1800s when the shul was built, they purposely made it with this extra like pointy tower on the top, so that the top would be the highest building in the area. Today they already build high-risers and skyscrapers. It doesn't work anymore. But when it was built, it was the tallest building. Shene'emar, as it says, Uleromem et Beit Elokeinu. There's a chiyuv, there's an obligation to lift the house of our God. Ve'en potchin pitchei HaKnesset ela b'mizrach. And ideally, the entrance of the shul should always be on the east. Shene'emar, as it says, V'hachonim lifnei HaMishkan kedma. They used to be living, Moshe, Aharon, the most important people, camped to the east of the Mishkan. Now this is only, according to the Rambam and his commentaries, when you're living in a place where Israel is to the west. So you face west, and the entrance is in the east. But today, where we face east, many commentators say you put the door at the other side, at the west, kind of like what we have over here, where you come in on the opposite side of where you're davening to. Now, in the shul, ubonin bo hechal, you build first a permanent ark. That's what we have today, the Aron HaKodesh. Shemanichin bo sefer Torah, where you place the Torah scrolls permanently, and also ubonin hechal zeh baruach. And you build the Heichal at the direction to which everybody davens towards in that city. So their faces should be towards the Aron HaKodesh when you stand up for davening. And then, halacha gimel, u'ma'amidin bima be'emtza habayit. You make a bima, it's like we have over here, a little stand in the middle of the Bet HaKnesset. Kedei sheyaleh aleha hakoreh b'Torah. So anybody who reads the Torah goes up on the bima. Umi asher omer la'am divrei kibushin. Or if anybody's saying a speech, an inspiring speech to the people. Divrei kibushin means words that conquer the heart. Every fast day, there was an elderly person who would get up and give a speech. Coming up this week, on Thursday, we have Shiva Asar B'Tammuz. There would be an elderly person that would get up and give an inspiring speech called Divrei Kibushin. So that should be done from the bima. So everybody should hear. Ukeshema'amidin ha'teva sheyesh ba sefer Torah. Then there's also the teva. The teva is more of the temporary ark. You good? The teva is more of a temporary ark. It was like a movable ark where they would keep the Torah that they were reading that day or that week. And that, ma'amidin otah ba'emtza. You put it also in the middle. The back of the movable ark should be facing the Heichal, the Aron HaKodesh, and the front towards the people. So like, today we don't have a teva really, but we would put it basically on the stand over there in front of the Aron HaKodesh, like a movable little closet where you put the Torah in, and then that's the one that you use for the current Kriya.
Well, then what's the point if you got two? I mean, why don't you
Because in those days, all of the, not just Torahs were in the ark. Every single Haftarah, Nevi'im, Ketuvim, it was all written on scrolls. So they would keep everything in the main ark, and they only put into this movable one what they were reading.
Oh, so it's all broken up into pieces.
To different sections. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Halacha Dalet. Ketzad ha'am yoshvin bebate knesiot. What's the order? How should people sit in shuls? Hazakenim yoshvin upnehem kalape ha'am. The older people should sit in the front on benches facing the people. Like Yitzhak. He faces the people. He's from the Zkenim. He looks towards the crowd. Yeah. And they're back towards the direction of the ark. The rest of the people sit rows by rows. The face of one row faces the back of the next row. To the point that everybody's faces should be towards the Kodesh, that's the Heichal, towards the elderly people, and towards the movable ark. When the Chazan stands up to lead the prayers, he stands on the ground, right in front of the movable ark, which we do today. We have the Amud is right in front of the Aron HaKodesh. But he faces the Heichal like everybody else. So everyone's facing essentially towards where we're davening, besides for the front row. Today they write, even the Zkenim, in many shuls also sit facing the Heichal. So everyone's facing the same way. Halacha Hey, they have a picture over here if you see. Like how it's all set up. You have the Aron HaKodesh, the important benches for the Zkenim, they face the crowd. Then you have all the rows who are facing the front, plus the bimas in the middle. So you see the whole setup. Halacha Hey, Batei Knesiyot u'Batei Midrashot. Shuls and houses of study, nohagin bahen kavod. We have to treat them with great honor. U'mechabdim otan, u'marbitzin otan. We sweep them, we mop them. V'nohagin kol Yisrael b'Sfarad u'v'ma'arav u'v'shin'ar u'v'eretz hatzvi. All the Jews have the custom, whether you live in Spain or in the West, or in Babylonia or in Israel, Eretz Hatzvi, it's called the land of beauty. Lahadlik ashashiyot b'batei knesiyot. They have the minhag, the custom, to light lanterns in shuls. Ulahatzia bekarkaan machzelaot kedei leshev aleihen, and to put on the ground mats so people can sit on them. Ubarei Edom, in the cities of Edom, which is Europe, yoshvin ba'al hakisaot. The Rambam says people sit in the shul on chairs, so you have nice chairs. And the idea is that basically honoring the shul. Halacha Vav, Batei Knesiyot u'Batei Midrashot. Another halacha that applies to shuls and houses of study is that it should only be used for what it's meant to be used for. Ein nohagin bahen kalut rosh. We don't behave there lightheadedly, making jokes, going tzchok v'hitul v'sicha b'teila, like laughing and joking and speaking meaningless words. Ve'en ochlin bahen ve'en shotin bahen. We should not eat or drink in a shul. Talk about that in a second.
Can you speak politics in shul?
Ve'en neotin bahen, and you cannot. Neotin either means you can't use it for benefit, or you can't beautify yourself. It's not a place to put on makeup and make yourself look good. Ve'en metailin bahen, you don't take a trip or a stroll in a shul. Ve'en nichnasin bahen bachama mipnei hachama ubagshami mipnei agshamim. And you shouldn't use it as protection from the weather. So during summertime, you don't go in to get some shade from the sun, or during the wintertime, you don't go in to get some shield from the rain. The chachamim b'talmidehem, but the sages and their students, mutarin le'echol v'lishtot bahen midochak. They're allowed to eat and drink because of the pressure. They can't go out and back to their houses, so they eat in the shul because that's where they eat. The commentaries today say that if you made the shul al tanai, if you had in mind that you're going to use the shul for other purposes, then you're allowed to use it for eating, for drinking. That's what, when this shul was built, they also had that in mind, because they knew that they were going to host like suudot sometimes, or a brit milah, something like that, where there's going to be a meal. So it was already included in the tanai. That's why today we can sit here and eat breakfast while we learn. Halacha zayin. Ve'en mechashvin bahen cheshbonot. You can't sit and do accounting work in a shul. Ela im ken hayu cheshbonot shel mitzvah. Unless it was accounting of a mitzvah. You go on kupa shel tzedakah, pidyon shvuyim, v'chayotze bahen, to figure out how much is in the community tzedakah pushka, or how much money is needed to redeem people that are in jail, or similar things. Ve'en maspidin bahen, ela hesped shel rabim. You can't do a eulogy for a levaya. You can't say a hesped inside them unless it's for a hesped shel rabim. It's a public hesped, which means some great sage in the city passed away. You want to bring his coffin into the shul and do a eulogy. That's allowed. Where everybody comes for him to honor them. Then you can do that. Otherwise, for a regular person, you don't do a eulogy in the shul. We do it in the chapel. You go to wherever they're going to bury, and you do it over there. If the shul had two entrances, one on each side, lo ya'asenu kapandria. You cannot make it into a shortcut, which means you need to get to the other side of shul. So you go through shul to make your way shorter. You go into one entrance, you go out the other one, and now your trip has become shorter. Because you can't go into a shul unless you're doing a mitzvah. You can't use it as a shortcut. Halachat. What if you had to go into a shul for a need that wasn't for davening? You have to go into to call your kid out of shul, to call your friend. Now what do? You should go in, and first read some Torah, or read a verse, or say a halacha. And then call your friend, whoever you have to call. So you don't end up going in just for your own needs. If you don't know how to read, you don't know psukim, so catch one of the kids running around the shul, because kids used to learn in shul. In those days, the school was in the shul. So you catch one of the students and you say, Krali hapasuk sha'ata korebo. Read me the last verse that you just learned. So he gives you some Torah information, and then that's good. What if there's no kids around? Just sit there. Just sit on a chair and pause for a minute. Then go and do what you have to do. Just sitting in the shul is already doing a mitzvah. As it says, Ashrei yoshvei veitecha v'gomer. Fortunate are those who sit in your house. Just sitting in the house of Hashem is already considered a mitzvah. Halacha Yud, Misha nichnas leitpalel o likrot. If you did come into a shul with a good purpose, you came in to daven, you came in to read, then mutar lo latzet b'petach shekenegdo kedei lekarev et haderech. Then you can use it as a shortcut. You were here for davening already, now you can go out the back door. You came in the back, you can go out the front. Umutar la'adam likanes lebet hakneset. It's also allowed for you to enter a shul b'maklo, with your walking stick. Right? It's got a walking stick right there. U'b'minalo, with shoes. U'ba'afundato, or with your money belt that people used to walk around with. U'ba'avak shal raglav, and with dust on your feet. That's allowed. We're going to see later that for the Bet HaMikdash, for the Holy Temple, you can't go in with any of these things. But for a shul, it's not as holy, so you can come in with those things. If you needed to spit, you're also allowed to spit in the shul. Ideally you shouldn't, but if you have to, you could. And in some places, we actually have a minhag to spit at the end of Aleinu L'Shabeach. From the Kabbalists, they write that you should spit on those words. Halacha Yud Aleph. Batei knesiyot or batei midrashot shecharvu. If you have a shul or a house of study which got destroyed, bikdushatan hin omdot. They're considered the same holy. Shene'emar, as it says, v'hashimoti et mikdashechem. I will destroy your holy places. He calls them holy while they're destroyed. Afal pi shehen shomemin bikdushatan hin omdin. Even if they're destroyed, they're still standing in their holiness. וכשם שנוהגים בהן כבוד ביישובן, כך נוהגים בהן בחורבנן.
אפילו בנית בניין איפה שהיה
לא, 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 לא. זה משהו אחר. We're going to see soon. וכשם שנוהגים בהן כבוד ביישובן, כך נוהגים בהן בחורבנן. The same way you treat them with honor when they're settled, when they're there, the same way you treat them with honor when they're destroyed. חוץ מכיבוד וריבוץ. Of course you don't have to sweep or mop. שאין מכבדין אותן, בין מרביצין אותן, you don't sweep or mop the floors because there's nobody there. Aluba hen asavim, if grass grew in the place of the shul, tolshinotam umanichinotam bimkoman. You purposely pick the grass and you leave it there, so everybody walking by should see, and they're going to get aroused to rebuild it, to treat it with respect again. Halacha Yud Bet. En sotrin bet hakneset k'dei livnot acher bimkomo o b'makom acher. You can't destroy a shul just to build another one in its place or in another place. The way you do it is the opposite. Aval bonin acher v'achar kach sotrin et zeh. You first build the other one, then you can destroy the old one. Why? Shema yed alahem ones v'lo yivnu. Maybe after you destroy the first one, there'll be no more money. The building campaign runs out of funds, and they're not going to learn, and they're not going to build it in the end. Afilu kotel echad mimenu. Not only the whole building, even if you're building one wall, you're building one new wall. Boneh chadash betzad hayashan v'achar kach soter hayashan. First, you build the new one near the old one, then you knock down the old one. You have to do it in the right order, with one exception. Halacha Yud Gimel b'med dvarim amurim. When do we say this? Shelo charvu yisodotav. If there's no problem with the building, the foundation is not destroyed, or shelo natu ktalav lipol, the walls aren't caving in. Avalim charvu yisodotav, or shentu ktalav lipol. But if it's a problem physically, the yisod is crumbling, or the walls are coming in, then of course, sotrino tomiyah, you destroy it right away. Umatchilin livot b'mehera b'yom v'alayla, and then you build the new one quickly, day and night. Shema tidcha kasha'a v'yishaer charev, because again, you might have the pressure of the time, and it will remain destroyed. The Talmud says that when there was one chacham that had to build a shul in his place, he destroyed the shul first, then he brought his bed to the shul, and he said, I'm only going to sleep here until you finish building. So that was a big push for everyone to keep on building and build fast. Yudalet. Mutar la'asot bet hakneset bet hamidrash. You can transfer a shul into a house of study. Aval bet hamidrash asur la'asoto bet hakneset. But you can't transfer a house of study into a shul. Shekidushat bet hamidrash yitera al kedushat bet hakneset, because the holiness of a house of study is greater than the holiness of a shul. And we have a rule, uma'alin ba'kodesh v'lo moridin. In holiness, we only go up. We don't go down. And for the same reason, we come to a whole new set of laws. V'chein b'nei ha'ir shemachru bet hakneset. If you have the people of a city who sold the shul, now you're not really allowed to sell a shul, but let's say they did for certain reasons where you're allowed to. They ended up selling a shul. Yesh lahem likach bedamav teva. They can only buy things that are holier than a shul. For example, the teva, the movable ark, is holier than the shul. Machru teva, if they sold the movable aron. Yesh lahem likach bedameha, with the money they can buy, again, only something on a higher level. Mitpachot otik l'sefer Torah. Cloths or the case for a sefer Torah. Ashkenazim, they put a cloth. Sfaradim, they have a whole case. Same thing, it's the thing that covers the Torah. That's higher level than the teva. Machru mitpachot otik, if they sold the cloths or the casing. Lokchim b'damav chumashim. They can buy chumashim. Chumashim is not like today the chumash. Chumash is like the actual scroll that had the whole Torah on it. Machru chumashim, if they sold a chumash, a scroll that had 1/5 of the Torah. Lokchim b'damav sefer Torah. They can now buy an actual full Torah scroll. Aval im machru sefer Torah, but if they sold the sefer Torah, that's the holiest level. En lokchim b'damav ela sefer Torah acher. You can only buy with the money another Torah scroll. She'en sham kedusha lema'ala mikdushat sefer Torah, because there is no holiness greater than the holiness of sefer Torah. V'chen b'motareha, says the Rambam. The same thing applies with extra funds. So if you sold a shul and then you bought an ark, but you had extra money left over, the extra money also can only be used for higher level things. Because that's how it goes. Ma'alin ba'kodesh, you only go higher levels in holiness. Says the Rambam Malachat Tetvav, it's even more so. Not only if they actually sold, but even if they're only collecting money. V'chein im gavu ha'am ma'ot. If the community collects money, they make a fundraising campaign. Livnot bet hamidrash or bet hakneset, to build a shul or a house of study. Or liknot teva, or to buy an ark, or mitpachot v'tik, or to buy a cloth or a case. Or sefer Torah, or to buy a Torah scroll. V'ratzu l'shanot kol ma shegavu. And then they have all the money, they go, no, you know what, we're going to change it. We want to buy something else now. En meshanin otan, ela mikdusha kala, likdusha chamura mimeno. We can only change it from a lighter kedusha to a higher level of holiness. Aval im asu ma shegavu v'hotiru. But if they made fundraising, and they bought what they wanted, and they had extra money, so the extra money didn't come from a sale, it came from fundraising, then mishanin hamotar lechol ma sheyirtzu. Then they can change the extra to whatever they want. Because you did your mission, you have extra money, go buy windows for the shul. There's no rules.
But only for the shul.
But only for, it has to be for that, for the main goal, for the shul. V'chol klei bet hakneset ke bet hakneset. All accessories in a shul are like a shul, like the bima, like the chairs, all these things. They have the same rule as the shul. Parochet she'al ha'aron, shemanichim bo asfarim, the curtain that hangs on the Aron HaKodesh, where the scrolls go, kimitpechot hasfarim. It has the same rules as the cloth around the Sefer Torah. V'im hitnu alehem, harein kifiyat tanai. If you made a condition about them, then everything goes according to your condition. You can say, I want the parochet to be less holy, not as holy, then use it later for something else. Halachat zayin b'med dvarim amurim shemutar limkor bet hakneset. Well, when do we say you're allowed to sell a shul? All these cases are talking about you sold a shul. It's not so simple. How can you sell a shul? Bebet hakneset shel kfarim. You can only sell a shul in villages, in small towns. Shelo asu oto ela al dat bnei hakfar levadam. Where the shul was only made having in mind the people who lived in that village. She'yeh lahem litpalel bo. They can have a place to daven. She'im ratzu kolam lemochro mutarin. So now if they all want to go and sell it, that's fine. Aval bet hakneset shel krakim. But if it's a shul of a big city, ho'il va'al dat kol anshe ha'olam nasa. Since it was made having in mind everybody in the world, it's not just for the city. Anybody who comes to visit should come daven here. She'yavo v'yitpalel bo kol ha'ba'al hamdina. Anybody who comes to the country can come and daven. Na'asa shel kol Yisrael. The shul becomes the possession of the entire Jewish people. Ve'en mochrin oto le'olam. You can never sell it again. Many commentaries say that even here, even like a shul like Sherman Oaks, we considered like Shul Kol Yisrael, because anybody comes to visit, come daven.
Yeah.
So today, what do you do? So you really can't. You really can't sell a shul ever. Except if Jews stop living in the place. So if Jews move out, like you have like in Brooklyn, certain neighborhoods in Brooklyn. Halacha Yud Zayin. Bnei hakfar sharatzu limkor bet hakneset shalahem. If you have people in a small city that wanted to sell their shul, or livnot b'damav bet hakneset acher, or to use the money to build another shul, or liknot b'damav teva or sefer Torah, or to buy with the money an ark or a sefer Torah. So what they have to do is, even if they're allowed to sell it, tzrichin lahatnot al halokeach, they have to make a condition with the buyer. Shalo yet la'asot oto, he can't make it into some degrading things. Lo merchatz, you can't turn it into a bathhouse. Lo bursiki, you can't turn it into a tannery where they work skins and hides of animals. Where they work hides. V'lo bet hatvila, you can't make it into a mikveh. V'lo bet hamayim, and you can't make it into a laundry house or a bathroom. V'im hitnu shiv'at tuvei ha'ir b'ma'amad anshe ha'ir b'shat mechira. If the 7 great people of the city, like the committee, the community council, in front of everybody, if they made a condition b'shat mechira at the time of sale, sheyehei alokeach mutar la'asot bo kol elu, that the buyer could do all of these things, mutar, then he's allowed, because everybody agreed, that's fine. Halacha yudchet, v'chen im hitnu shiv'at tuvei ha'ir b'ma'amad anshe ha'ir, al mutar hadamim sheyiyu chulin. Same thing if the 7 big community council members made a condition while everybody was there, that any leftover money from different selling campaigns could become used for anything. They'll be chulin, they'll be weekday, mundane. Harehin chulin, they are considered to be mundane, you can use them for anything. Ukeshelokchin hadamim. When you take the money of the sale and you build another shul, or you buy an ark or a cloth or a case, or the small scrolls or the full Torah scrolls, everything will be left to be weekday money as they made a condition, and they do whatever they want. Same thing applies if the entire city accepts upon themselves the authority of one man. They say, you're going to make all of our decisions for us. Whatever he does is done. He can sell, he can give on his own, according to what he sees fit, and make conditions as he sees fit, and everybody follows his authority. The same way you can sell a shul in a small city, you could also gift it. Because gifting also comes from a place of returning a favor. If the community wouldn't benefit from giving this gift, lo natunu, they wouldn't give it. So obviously there's a reason to give it, so you can give it. Aval lo maskirinoto v'lo mashkininoto. You cannot rent out a shul, and you cannot use it as collateral, unless the person who's taking it will continue using it as a shul. Then it's fine.
So you cannot rent a shul
long term. Unless he's going to use it as a shul. If the renter will use it as a shul.
Westwood Village, they rented a place in the mall.
No, I'm saying if you have a shul and you're renting it out, like this Chabad, we can't go rent out to someone else.
The shul.
But you can rent. Of course. V'chen keshasotrin v'atei knesiyot livnotan. Same thing if you destroy a shul to rebuild it. Mutarin limkor ulahachalif v'latet matana. You can sell, you can exchange, you can give a gift. Halevenim v'ha'etzim v'ha'afar shalahen. All the bricks and the wood and the dirt. Aval halvotan asur. But to lend them out would be forbidden. She'en ha'kedusha ola mehen ella b'damim o b'hanaya shehi kedamim. Because the rule is that the holiness never departs unless somebody pays money for it. You can exchange it, or uses it with pleasure, like a benefit, which is like money. But just to lend it out, have somebody else hold on to it, the holiness never leaves. Final halacha, halacha chaf aleph, rechova shel ir, the main street of a city. Afal pi sheha'am mitpalelin bo betaniyot uv'ma'amadot, even though there are times where the community prays there, like on fast days, or ma'amadot, there's certain days where in the temple they divided all the kohanim and levim to 24 groups, and corresponding to that, every major city had also a group of Jews that would go into the main street and daven there on the day when their Kohanim or Leviyim group was serving in the temple. It's called the Ma'amad. So people daven in the main street, because people, it's a lot of people, big crowds, and the shuls can handle them. Nevertheless, in bo kedusha, it doesn't become holy. Because it's temporary, it's not set for davening. Also, if you have certain houses or backyards where everybody gathers for davening, this became very, in Corona became very, very common. People made a backyard into a shul. In bahem kedusha, they don't get a holiness because they weren't set into a place for davening alone. You daven there temporarily, like a person who davens in a house. But if you did make a full kedusha, then it actually becomes holy.